everyone! So today we are sharing with you about one of our favorite topics, prayer evangelism.
Yay!
Woohoo! So, but before we talk about what prayer evangelism actually is, let's answer the question of why it's important and why we do it. So we do it in order to see God's kingdom brought here on earth, right? So first of all, what is God's kingdom?
So what is it?
So it's righteousness, peace, and joy, right? It looks like words and deeds that we would like to call prayer evangelism. It's a lifestyle of loving our neighbor and neighborhood, or those in our workplace, or sphere of influence, wherever we are.
You may ask, how do I do this? It may seem like some kind of abstract concept, but we have some practical steps, so don't you worry. First, get a love for the people. A lot of times we see people as the enemy, but Ephesians 6:12 says we do not fight against flesh and blood, and we need to remember that. But spiritual forces of darkness are what we fight against. And Luke 10:5-6 calls us to be people who bring peace.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's really good. So how do we get a love for the people and be peace bringers? We'd like to say that you start with prayer. Praying for people helps you to see them the way God sees them and brings an opportunity for real friendship to happen and an opportunity to show Jesus to people in very practical ways.
And it changes your heart. It's amazing. And like I just said, when you pray for people, your heart changes, right? And I remember years ago, we had a neighbor who was always grumpy all the time. And every time I saw him, I greeted him. And there was never a response. And then eventually I started praying for him. And then God started to change my heart and giving me a love for him and showing me the man like the way he sees him. It was amazing transformation in me. And then that didn't immediately change the man. But then over time, it did. And he started greeting me back, started inviting me into his home. And then we had dinner together, next thing you see. And a friendship started to develop. And that's the next thing I want to talk about, developing true friendships. In Luke 10:7-8, Jesus talks about eating together. And when we look at Jesus' ministries, what do we see? We see a lot of food involved.
Yeah, this was one of his main ministries.
It's his main thing. And it didn't matter which kind of people he was with. Like, it was the rich, it was the poor. He ate together. And out of our experience, there are many ways you can spend time with people. But eating together is really one of the best ways because it brings such a depth in relationship and friendship, and you get really deep conversation going. So it's really awesome.
So we ran into our friend Mabel in the coffee shop, and it was about that time for dinner, and we actually invited her to come up to eat with us. She said, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, come on up." So we were sitting around the table, chopping vegetables. Marcus was in the kitchen cooking. At the end of the time, we had this beautiful spread on the table, and she looked at us and said, "Wow, I can't remember the last time I sat around an actual table and had a home-cooked meal."
That shocked me, really, because like we eat together all the time. It was like crazy.
And then she went on to say, "This is the first time I've seen a healthy relationship between a man and a woman." And we were actually able to pray for her, and our friendship deepened, and all of this happened out of eating together.
Yeah, eat food together.
Next is meeting a felt need. Luke 10:9. Jesus challenges us to meet the needs of those around us. Often he did this by healing the sick. People have real needs, but they don't always open up until we have a true friendship with them, and then they'll share with us. And this will give us an opportunity to pray and also do acts of love. So one of our God-given callings is to be people of compassionate action. So we met Janice at a neighborhood event, and a friendship developed. Over COVID, her son started having issues with his business, so we were able to pray for the business, and it started to do better. And then she started to open up about some felt needs that she had. There were some computer problems and different technical things, and Marcus, being good with technology, was able to actually fix those problems. And so the friendship gave an opportunity to meet some felt needs.
And she felt so loved through it. It's amazing. Well, we're already at our last practical step for today.
Yes, we are. What is it?
And what is it? Proclaiming Jesus with our words. In Luke 10:9, it says to tell about the kingdom or proclaim the kingdom, right? And when we look at Jesus' life, we see so many acts of love. He healed people. He cared about them in so many ways. But he also talked to people. He shared about the kingdom of God through parables in simple ways that people could understand. It's incredible. And it's important for us to do the same thing. So after we've shown love to people through our actions, let's start using our words. You know, many people start off with sharing and using their words, but doing the acts of love first gives us actually a greater authority to share and to speak into people's lives.
It really does. So I met my friend Diana at a neighborhood meetup, and I just had a real heart for her, even though we didn't have anything in common, really. She was transgender, she was older, political activist. But you know what? I just connected with her right away, and we started to build a friendship. Towards the end of her life, I was able to call her and visit her when she was bedridden, and I was actually able to share Jesus with her through words at that time, and she accepted
I
him.
remember how excited Chen came home that day. Like, it was awesome.
I was so excited. But that came out of 8 years of friendship. But it opened the door to be able to share Jesus through words.
So these are the practical steps for prayer evangelism. But now you may ask yourself,
where do I start?
So there are so many people around me and I feel a bit overwhelmed, right? That's how we feel sometimes. But what about starting with the one?
The one.
So now you have to ask yourself the question, who is your one? When we think of Jesus, we connect him to big crowds, right? Like he speaks to the 5,000 or people follow him all over the place. Like there were always tons of people. But Jesus always stopped for the individual.
Yes,
if it's the lady at the well or if it's like the blind beggar, like Jesus stopped and spent time with them and valued the one. A few years ago, God challenged us to start praying for specific neighbors. And we started doing that. And one of them was Rhonda. And, you know, over time praying for her, we started to see her with God's heart and started to have a true love for her. Like, it was amazing. And then a friendship was developed by having her over for brunches and barbecues and all those kind of things to connect with. And then over time, she started asking us for favors. She started asking us, like, can you feed my fish? Can you take my packages in while I'm gone? And that's a sign of, like, actually a true friendship because it's a two-way street, right? Friendship, like, it's amazing. So when that happened, like, also the next thing happened that, like, there's a new depth in our relationship. And she starts sharing about, like, spiritual things and what she believes. And she talks about meditating. And when we went home later and started praying and asking God, like, how to pray for her, he said, start praying for her for an encounter with Jesus in her meditation time.
And we did this for 3 years.
Yeah. So we kept praying for that. And, you know, after 3 years, that actually happened.
It did.
You know, she's telling us about, like, she was meditating and then Jesus showed up in her meditation. And she's been doing that for 15 years. He never showed up there. And he said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father than through me. And because of this encounter, she came to us and asked again, like, hey, let's talk some more about God. And now she's open for more.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So, in conclusion, we can live a lifestyle of bringing God's kingdom through prayer evangelism. It can simply look like getting a love for the people, developing true friendships, meeting a felt need, and using words. And we can start by asking God, who is our one? So start loving the one in your neighborhood, your workplace, or your sphere of influence.
And start today.
Yeah, get started.